Let's start with the original post. The original poster reluctantly goes to a family barbecue. The nephews and nieces push people into the pool and eventually try with the original poster. Seeing this coming from a mile away, the original poster steps out of the way and the kids fall in along with the phone they were holding to record. The original poster's sisters got upset for almost letting their kids drown, and because the phone is now at the bottom of the pool. They insist that the original poster should have let the kids push him into the pool and needs to apologize. Now for the update almost 1 month later. The original poster spends the first part of this update explaining that the kids were fully capable of swimming and that the party ended on a sour note. It turns out a drunk brother-in-law who face-planted had to get stitches. Sisters and brothers-in-law texted mean things to the original poster, who, along with his wife, blocked them. The parents were upset at the texts and made the sisters apologize and end this nonsense. The original poster thought things were over, but instead gets a text from one brother-in-law saying the original poster needs to reimburse them for the phone. The original poster refuses, sends a screenshot to his parents, and says he's going no contact with the sisters. In what the original poster says is an out-of-character move, the dad calls the sisters and rips them a new one. Grandkids are no longer welcome at their place indefinitely, which messes up the free babysitting the mom provides. They are banned from the vacation house, and he tells them that the original poster owns that vacation house, not the parents. The sisters freak out. The sisters and husbands come over unannounced to apologize a few days later. The original poster and his wife are out at dinner, so they leave a note. The original poster decides no contact is the best option for now. Now for the next update. 9 days later, the original poster provides financial context here. The original poster's sisters think parents are dripping in money when in fact they are not. It turns out the oldest sister and her family have been living beyond their means and are in need of a loan, which the parents can't give. She's also been renting out the vacation house once a month or so for the last 3 years and has been keeping the money. The other sister was aware of this and possibly has rented it out previously as well. The original poster's parents feel awful and let him know. They figure that the sisters will try to convince the original poster to let them rent out the house. Turns out they're right. The sisters show up and practically force their way inside the original poster's house to convince them to let them use the place. They also say, quoting from the original poster here, "I've been a shitty brother and that I needed to step up and plan on paying for their kids' college tuitions since that's what family does." The original poster calls them out on their nonsense, and there's a huge blow-up, and the sisters leave. The original poster is exhausted, frustrated, and drained. Now for the update, 2.5 weeks later. The original poster's parents decide they're done managing the vacation home, keeping track of who was using it, routine maintenance, etc., because the sisters keep pressuring them to use it. The original poster feels bad for his parents because he wanted them to be able to use it regularly, and now dynamics have changed, but he gets it. The original poster locks the gate with a heavy-duty chain and lock, resets all keypads, creates new codes, gets security cameras, and has signs put up saying the area is monitored by video. The original poster gets a call from both husbands trying to convince him to let them use the house like they always have. The oldest brother-in-law tried to go up with some friends, but couldn't get in. He threatens on the phone to basically break in and acts completely entitled. The other brother-in-law sounds like he is being made to call by the sister. The original poster obviously says no and considers selling the home. He also has no plans to initiate contact with the sisters, and they are not talking with him. Now for the update 1 month later. The original poster hires a guy to manage/look after the vacation home. Parents are continually pressured by sisters to tell the original poster to open up the vacation home for Thanksgiving. They refused and instead said they would organize a gathering at an Airbnb if everyone split the cost. Otherwise, they would host at their place. This causes an argument because the middle sister is for the Airbnb, but the oldest sister doesn't have any money. So Thanksgiving will be at the parents' house, but the original poster and wife won't be there. Parents ask the original poster not to sell for now, as they would like to still use the place, but won't until sisters have come to terms with the new normal. Wife and the original poster have stayed no contact with sisters, but they have called and left messages demanding the original poster meets with them and work out how everyone can use the family vacation home. The original poster doesn't respond. He also does not plan to turn the vacation home into an Airbnb. The original poster's parents tell him that the oldest sister and her husband are getting out of the leases for their SUV and big truck and are selling their jet skis and some other things they've never needed. That's going to be really hard on her. She's quite the braggart and won't like being seen in something older, smaller, or cheaper. The brother-in-law's identity is very much wrapped up with his truck as well. He even has a small tattoo of the truck company's logo, which frankly is one of the many reasons why the original poster and he never hung out. Now for the update, 1.5 months later. Things have gone to hell. The original poster really, truly did not think anything like this would happen. Short version. The brothers-in-law broke into the original poster's vacation home and were arrested. They've been charged with breaking and entering, destruction of property, and communicating threats, all Class 1 misdemeanors. The original poster has refused to drop the charges. He might do so if he's fully paid for the damage they caused. They were still in jail as of Saturday evening. It's assumed they're out by now. The brothers-in-law went to the vacation home and cut through the chain, damaged the gate. They messed up the front door trying to get in, ended up getting through another door, and then broke into the barn. David, the guy the original poster hired to manage the home, called the cops. Cops didn't buy the brothers-in-law's excuses that they were allowed, and the original poster was unreachable at the moment due to spending the day with his wife's family and leaving the phones in the car. The brothers-in-law were booked at the sheriff's office. Sisters freaked out, but the original poster had them blocked. The older sister couldn't afford bail because their cards were maxed out, so the middle sister would have to pay for everything. The original poster and his wife checked their phones late on Friday on their way home and found that mom and dad, sheriff's department, and David had all called. The original poster called David when he got home and found out the extent of the damage. He ended Friday calling the sheriff's department and telling them it wasn't a misunderstanding and that the brothers-in-law did not have his permission to be there. I waited until Saturday afternoon to call my folks. They were both pretty rattled about it all, my mom in particular. My sisters had browbeat them into telling me I should tell the cops it was all a mistake and that I wanted the charges dropped. I refused flat out, told them there was no way I'd do that until I spoke with an attorney, and also not until I was paid in full for whatever it will cost to fix everything 100%. My mom was crying hard by the time we got off the phone, which of course made me feel like shoot. My dad suggested it was time for a complete start over, but also said he thought they needed to pay for the damage. I haven't gone up to the property yet. There's nothing I can do, and I'll probably go nuts when I see the damage in person. The photos are bad enough. I'm hoping to tomorrow or Wednesday, but my job isn't one I can just wander off from for non-emergencies. I've left messages with 2 attorney friends asking them to recommend the right lawyers to go after my sisters and BILs. I don't know what I can do exactly, but I'm hoping to get restraining orders. I have all the texts they've sent me. That might help. I'm strongly considering suing them for the money they made, renting the place. I don't care about the cash, but it will help make them as miserable as possible. The gloves are definitely off at this point. A couple of side notes. BILs had no idea I'd hired someone to keep an eye on things or that there are cameras there now. My parents knew but hadn't told them because they knew it would just give my sisters a reason to drama up. There are signs on the property stating it's being monitored with cameras and no trespassing signs, though. My wife has completely had it at this point. I don't blame her. She's been more than patient about it all, but she reached her limit and was not shy about letting me know. She told me it's up to me how I deal with this, but that she thought they all needed to be taught a hard lesson. Older brother-in-law likely won't face any repercussions at his job over this, but middle brother-in-law has a security clearance, so he might. I'm hoping that will be motivation for middle brother-in-law to pay for the damages himself immediately. David, the caretaker, has an interesting background. I knew he was friends with some of the deputies, figured it was because they were all locals. I was wrong. He was a cop in a big city for years, was shot on duty, and afterwards decided to quit and move to where his parents had retired. He has some PTSD over it all. His dog is a certified service animal and is usually with him. I know law enforcement people tend to hang together. I guess that's how they became his friend group. I don't want to see or speak with these a-holes for the rest of my life. I know this is in direct conflict with my overwhelming urge to make their lives as miserable as possible. Now for the 5-day update. Didn't think I'd be doing another post this soon, but a lot has happened over the past 2 days. Short version, I think the corner has been turned on this crap. Thursday afternoon, I got a courier-delivered envelope at my office. In it was a signed letter from both my brothers-in-law and a cashier's check for $5,000. In the letter, they made what I have to say was a really sincere apology. Among other things, they acknowledged breaking in, acknowledged it was wrong, said the $5,000 was to pay for the damage, and that they'd pay more if it cost more than that. Also said they'd stay away from the vacation home unless my wife and I specifically invited them. They also asked that I do what I could to get the charges dropped as soon as possible because they both could lose their jobs and that they'd agree to a restraining order or whatever else it took for that to happen. There was more as well, all conciliatory, but that's the gist of it. To say this was a shock is an understatement. It was obviously a total 180 from their past behavior. I'd already made an appointment with an attorney to see about suing my BILs over the damage and to try to get a restraining order. I called him and told him what I'd just received, and he agreed to meet with me at the end of the day instead of next week. Told me not to deposit the check. We met for about 2 hours. He ended up recommending the wife and I do a settlement and mutual release agreement with all 4 of them, sisters and BILs. He said if we went after them via lawsuit that we'd almost certainly win, but that it could take 2 years or more. There would be sizable upfront legal fees and that we might never see any money. He also said we could keep the $5,000 free and clear even if we didn't let them off the hook. He's drawing up the agreement. It won't be ready until Monday. The agreement will include what's essentially the civil equivalent of a restraining order. I'd already asked my property manager to work up a bid to get the damage repaired. I called him after the meeting and asked that he get me as close an estimate as possible, ASAP. Got that Friday. He thinks it will take around $4,000 to fix everything. Most of that is for the front door. On Friday, my attorney contacted each of the BILs, told them what we were proposing, and advised them to get their own lawyers. They both agreed to it. The middle brother-in-law told him they could afford to either pay for the damages or pay for a lawyer, but not both, and they figured a lawyer wouldn't make any difference given that they really had no defense for what they did. His biggest concern was if the charges could be dropped. From what I can tell, they're willing to do anything, sign anything to make this all go away. My attorney also called the DA's office on Friday to discuss dismissing the charges, got the name of the prosecutor and left them a message, but has not spoken to them yet. He thinks they'll dismiss the charges because the BILs are paying up and they have no priors. But then, again, he's not a criminal lawyer. Also said I should be prepared to drive up there Monday or Tuesday and tell the prosecutor in person that I want everything dismissed. He's also advised me to continue to be no contact with sisters and BILs, especially for the next 6 months, and that it will be really important to follow the terms of the agreement when it comes to future interactions with them. I'm guessing that the BIL's change of heart is due to them having figured out what's at stake for them, what it's going to cost them in legal fees and fines and so on. There's also the highly unlikely possibility that they could go to jail for up to 120 days. And as I've mentioned, one of them has a security clearance for his job that could be at risk. So this is their Hail Mary pass to keep their normal lives. This isn't a perfect resolution to the situation, but at least it will get me past the legal and financial parts of the show that I've been in for the past few months. I doubt I'll ever have a civil relationship with any of them ever again. And that's fine. What I want most at this point is to close this off, get on with my life, and never speak to any of them again. I'm exhausted from this. Wife feels pretty much the same way. Kind of a side issue, but getting the written apology was weirdly a huge moment for me. I wasn't expecting that ever, but apparently it matters to me quite a bit. The money doesn't feel particularly important at this moment. I'll damn sure take it though. Also, I'm pretty certain my middle sister and her husband came up with the money. The cashier's check is from the credit union of the company he works for. Once things are signed, I plan to make one more update, probably just an edit to this post. I'm sorry for being so pedantic. Writing these posts has helped clear my head, and the feedback has really helped. I truly appreciate everyone's comments, insights, and support, and I really, really hope none of you ever have to go through this kind of nonsense. Now for the update. Tuesday morning, I met with my attorney and went over the agreement. We changed a couple of minor things, and he sent it to my sisters and brothers-in-law. It included a requirement that they pay my attorney's fee, about $3,000. They weren't happy about that and tried to negotiate it away, but he told them they either accept it as is or there would be no deal at all, and we'd proceed with suing them for the money they got from renting out the place, wear and tear from renting it, repair costs from their break-in, emotional distress, lost income from having to deal with this, attorney fees, and whatever else we could. He also told them I would push hard with the DA's office to prosecute every charge. Short version, they came in and signed. I wasn't there. I'm told it was a pretty tense environment, that the middle brother-in-law appeared to have taken charge, and that at one point he told both of my sisters to shut the hell up, or he was walking away from the whole thing, making his own deal with us, and the rest of them could all go to hell. They provided another cashier's check for $2,500, claimed that's all they had. It's close enough that we're going to accept it as the final payment. Attorney also told me that everyone was very cold and curt towards one another, but that they all managed to keep it together long enough to sign and left without making too big of a scene. I drove up to the vacation house early yesterday to check out the damage and meet with the DA's office. Seeing the damage made my blood boil. It was so senseless. I was so pissed that I was ready to eat the cost of repairs and do everything I could to ruin their lives. Tried walking it off, failed utterly, ended up calling a good friend who was kind enough to stay on the phone for over an hour, letting me spew and vent. He eventually got me back to focusing on the bigger picture of putting this behind me and getting on with my life. Honestly, I'm still not sure that's what I want to do, but I settled down enough to get some food in me, and I felt better. After lunch, I went to the DA's office, hadn't made an appointment and had to wait a while, but got to meet with the assistant DA who's got the case. Short version is that since I don't want to prosecute and the brothers-in-law have already paid for the damages, they are willing to drop all the charges except trespassing, which in this case will be a Class 2 misdemeanor. The brothers-in-law will have to plead guilty and pay whatever fine the judge sets. I'm also told that if they fight the trespassing charge, or ever so much as fart in public up there, that it would go very poorly for them. It helped that the brothers-in-law didn't resist arrest. If they had, none of the charges would have been dropped. I also went by the sheriff's office to thank them for getting there so quickly and everything. Wanted to thank the deputies personally, but only spoke to the dispatch person. And I tried to meet up with David, the property manager, but couldn't get hold of him. A couple of notes. The agreement includes a no-contact clause. Basically, if any of them show up where my wife or I are, or the other way around, whoever got there last has to leave immediately. No contact except through attorneys or other mutually agreed upon third parties. They get to keep whatever they made from renting the vacation house, my big give, unless I have tax consequences which they will be responsible for. and we release each other from all other liabilities up through the present. There's more to it than that, but those are the high points. Wife and I will sign the agreement later today. After that, I can't talk about most of this, but I can talk around it. I think this is my final update regarding all this nonsense, but I'll respond to comments if I can. As I've said before, posting about all of this and reading folks' thoughts and responses has been really helpful and has probably been key in my being able to handle this in a relatively healthy way. So thank you all again. Now for the 3-5-month update. Thought it would be worth an update for anyone who's interested. Unsurprisingly, my oldest sister and brother-in-law have filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. While I don't care about what happens to them financially or otherwise, they've also managed to drag my parents into their mess, which I'm not happy about. At the start of the year, my brother-in-law's oversized customized Pride and Joy truck was repossessed. Pretty embarrassing for him, I'm sure. Happened at work. This was their breaking point. Without the truck, they have to share a Kia. My parents loaned them, and they can barely fit in it with their 3 kids. Financially, they're effed. They owe at least $125, probably more, on high-interest credit cards. They have 0 equity in their house and have a couple of personal loans that I'm pretty certain they got under false pretenses. They have loans on their jet skis, ATVs, and trailers. They also owe a chunk of money from defaulting on the truck lease. They hadn't made any payments on their credit cards or loans in months and were behind on their house payments as well. They got out of the lease on my sister's massive SUV late last year. They were upside down on it as well, so had to come up with cash to do so. They also had to pay an attorney, the fine, and court costs for my brother-in-law's trespassing charge at the vacation house. And they owe my middle sister and her husband money for bail and their portion of the damages to the place. As I've mentioned before, my folks have never been financial wizards, but they have at least been generally responsible. They're retired, their home is paid off, and they live off of Social Security and pensions. Altogether, they get more than they spend. Minimal savings, just an emergency fund. Turns out my folks emptied out that fund, cashed out their small IRA, $20K, and gave it to my sister. That let her catch up on the house payment and cover the negative equity on her car lease. But now literally every bit of savings my parents possessed is gone. Plus, my parents have been paying for their groceries for several months and continue to pay the insurance on the car they loaned my sister. According to my dad, my sisters worked my mom for weeks to get her to fork over the money. They'd worked on both my folks at the same time for a while, but my dad flat out refused every time. Eventually, Mom caved. She was worried that my sister would have to move to a hovel in some backwater town and that the kids would be barefoot and eating dirt. Dad's not happy about it, and to say there's some tension between them right now is an understatement. But they'll be fine. I was pretty disappointed when my parents told me all this, but I wasn't surprised. It sucks that they emptied out their savings to help, but I kind of get it, the way the bankruptcy laws are in our state. By getting caught up on the home loan, my sister should be able to keep the house. I tried hard not to say how I felt about this, and my sisters mostly succeeded. Really, I'm way more pissed about this than I should be. The worst part for me is that my sister and brother-in-law could now contact me and my wife without any real fear of repercussions. The only penalty the no-contact agreement has is that if they violate it, we can go after them for the money they made from renting out the vacation house and related damages. Since they've filed for bankruptcy, that's now not an impediment for them. I'm hoping they'll leave us alone, but who knows? I've spent 2 weekends at the mountain house since the start of the year, once with my wife and once alone. Both times there was a lot of snow. It was incredibly beautiful and relaxing. Very therapeutic. The place also has good internet service now, which is nice. Plus, knowing that I can count on David, the property manager, to keep the place in shape and ready for us to visit and to help if we get snowed in eliminates most of the stress in owning it. My folks have used it a few times as well and get along great with David. Now for a few important comments. When asked if a restraining order could be obtained, it was said, if they start up again, I do indeed plan to get a restraining order. In fact, my wife made it clear to me she expects a very hard approach to any BS from them going forward, which I agree with, of course. I had the security cameras at our house upgraded at the start of the year just in case they come by. I also kept all their previous texts and provided screenshots to my attorney for safekeeping. If they cause any trouble at the vacation house, they're toast. The sheriff's department and DA's office have the full story and are sympathetic to our situation. When someone expressed shock about the $125,000 on credit cards, it was explained, $125K is my estimate based on my sister telling my parents they were racking up at least $3,000 per month just in credit card interest. She thought it might be more. Their credit was already crap before the bankruptcy, so I'm guessing they might be paying as high as 28% interest. If so, they'd owe about $125K. If they're paying a lower interest rate, the principal would be higher. But yeah, it's an absurd amount, and that $3,000 doesn't include all the other interest they're paying. And of course, there's the principal that just sits there. On the other hand, I'm told they had a great time going to Disney World for a week, so there's that. Regarding the middle brother-in-law, it was noted, younger brother-in-law seems to be more decent than I've given him credit for in the past. I'll admit to a bit of myopia. For years, I've seen the four of them and their kids as just one mass of inconvenient people I have nothing in common with, but can't avoid. But he seems to have hit his limit and made some changes. Hope it works out for him and that he pulls my sister in the right direction. When discussing how the sisters got so entitled, it was shared. My sisters and I weren't raised to be like they are. When I was young, they weren't any more self-entitled than any other teenagers. We all worked crappy teenage jobs, didn't get spoiled. It was really a very standard suburban upbringing. We weren't super close, but we weren't enemies. Somewhere along the line, after going off to college, they changed for the worse. I guess it could be worse. They could have become drug addicts or militant vegan volcano worshippers or whatever. But they sure became people I don't want to be around. And yes, the pool incident was the spark for the meltdown, but the fuel had been accumulating for years. It would have come out at some point that she was renting the house out on the sly, and things would have gone to hell then, just like they did now. Now for the 4-month update. There's been a fair number of requests for an update, and considering it's coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the pool incident, I thought I'd post one. My folks worked through Mom giving my oldest sister her IRA and their emergency fund. Altogether, Mom gave her $45. According to Dad, once Mom realized how much she'd been manipulated, she got as mad and upset as he'd ever seen her. I think she had a moment of clarity. She and Dad ended up calling my sisters on a 3-way call, and according to Dad, it went south pretty quickly. Sisters were gaslighting them. Mom lost her cool and ended up ripping into them hard. There were lots of tears, and eventually, both sisters hung up. Mom really just wanted both sisters to acknowledge that they'd put her and Dad in a risky financial situation. Typical blow-up, I guess, but not the kind of thing that happens in our family. The next morning, my dad called my older sister and told her he'd be picking up the car they'd loaned her. She tried to argue, but he told her it wasn't up for discussion. He got a neighbor friend to take him to her house as soon as he hung up and drove it home without talking to her. Sister called and went off on him, said lots of nasty stuff, which of course hurt him. But at least they have the car back. Dad also told me something that left me dumbfounded. For the last 17 years, they were giving both sisters a grocery allowance that was up to $500 per month. What the effing F? I'd thought I had a pretty good handle on where their money was going, but clearly I was wrong. This started back when I was going to grad school and living at home. My sisters asked for the money because they thought it wasn't fair that I was living at home rent-free, and then it just never ended. In any case, my parents cut them off. Unsurprisingly, my sisters weren't happy about it. Who the hell gets an allowance from their parents when they're in their 40s? Because of all this, my folks and sisters quit talking for a while. Don't know if they've resolved everything, but they appear to be on speaking terms again, though my folks aren't having them or the kids over. I'm in don't ask mode. It's their business. My folks are using the vacation home fairly regularly. Currently, they're there for a 2-week stay and will probably make it 3. Unfortunately, my wife and I haven't spent any time there lately, other than me having made a couple of day trips to check on it and drop off some supplies. The property manager I hired, David, is still taking good care of the place. Side note, middle sister told my mom that the oldest sister had been making over $6,000 per month renting the house out, and that it had been going on for nearly 3 years. Pretty certain she didn't declare the income. So that's like grossing $8K, $9K per month. I will forever find that galling. Oldest sister and brother-in-law still have their house. My attorney checked up on their bankruptcy case. The court converted it from Chapter 7 to Chapter 13, which I believe means they have to pay back a lot more of their debts. Middle sister and her husband are still separated. I don't know if my middle brother-in-law has had any issues with his security clearance because of breaking into the house. I do know he's still with the same big defense company. At my parents' request, I've been working on putting their house into a trust. They want me to manage their affairs as they get older and keep the house safe from my sisters. I'm working with an attorney, but it's not done yet. Folks have asked me to be the trustee and have also given me full power of attorney. The best part about the last few months is that my sisters' BILs have left us alone and have stayed away from the vacation home. Wife and I are really happy to be back to our normal lives. Hope everyone else's lives are going great. Now for the 5-month update. Some folks have asked for an update. Here you go. In August, my attorney let me know he'd received a letter from me from my middle brother-in-law. This was the first contact from any of my sisters or their husbands since they'd been arrested. It was a long letter, had a sincere apology, and a lot of information he thought I should know. The biggest thing was that he and my sister are divorced, not separated. He moved out and filed for divorce right after we made the settlement agreement. He and my middle sister kept it quiet until it was done. Their house sold in June and she's moved to an apartment. He told me that his being arrested last year, along with my other brother-in-law for breaking into the vacation house, could have cost him his job and ended the life of his career, and that it was a huge moment of clarity. He said that the dynamic between the 4 of them, my sisters, him, and my oldest sister's husband, had become totally toxic, that they are all borderline alcoholics, or worse, and that he had to get away from that environment. He no longer speaks to my oldest sister or her husband. He also asked if my dad and I could meet and have an extended conversation, as there were things he needed to talk about in person. Frankly, I was unenthused, but my wife thought it was worth doing. I asked my dad if he was interested. He was. So I relayed a response to now ex-brother-in-law through my attorney, and we met over lunch. We talked for over 2 hours. It was pretty exhausting. Ex-brother-in-law looked better than I'd seen him in, well, forever. He's quit drinking, is in therapy, has lost a lot of weight, and looked fit. He was apologetic about all the BS he'd been involved in and apologized to my dad for hiding the divorce. He told us therapy is really helping him. He asked me if the $5K he'd sent covered all the damage to the vacation house. I told him it had, and thanked me for talking to the county prosecutor. He said he is strongly considering transferring to a new project that would have him living overseas for the next few years, that he really needed to reset his life, but he was trying to balance his mental health against not being part of his kids' lives every day. Ex-brother-in-law also hit us with what, for me, was quite the WTF. Apparently, my sisters have hated me since before I was born, but have always hidden it from the rest of us. They liked things better when there were just the 2 of them. He said when they drank, which was whenever they were together, my sisters would often complain about me being the favorite child, how my folks gave me more opportunities than they had, how my doing well was a result of that, and that I didn't deserve my success. None of that made any sense to me or my dad. All 3 of us went to the same public schools, had dumb part-time jobs, etc. My folks paid for 100% of their college, not mine. I got a full scholarship. I was pretty shocked by this, but my dad was literally speechless. Dad eventually said he had no clue they felt that way as kids and that he and Mom had never favored any of us. He's still having a hard time with this. Personally, I'm embarrassed that I was clueless about it all my life, but it does explain a lot. Ex-brother-in-law warned us that my sisters and remaining brother-in-law intended to put on a full court press to alienate my folks from my wife and me. They also planned to keep the grandkids away from my folks to pressure them. He said that they're still 1,000% convinced that my folks are sitting on a ton of money, they want some of it ASAP, and are sure I'd stop my folks from giving them anything. That got a laugh out of my dad because he and Mom simply don't have any real money. They do have their house, of course. Ex-brother-in-law also told us that he and my middle sister had rented out the vacation house a total of 6 times over the years. He offered to pay me what they'd made. I declined and told him it was in the past. He also told us my older sister brother-in-law had never declared the income from renting out the vacation house. He didn't want to get in trouble with the IRS. Both my dad and I spoke with ex-brother-in-law separately for a few minutes. Don't know what they talked about. I thanked him for his apology and for making things right financially. Also wished him well and told him I'd be willing to talk with him again down the road. Don't think that's going to happen. I probably could have been more forgiving, but I think he appreciated me not pretending like all this crap hasn't affected my wife and me. There was more, but it's less important, and this is too long as it is. After ex-brother-in-law left, I asked my dad if he, Mom, and I could sit down and talk about all this. I didn't mean immediately, but that's how he took it. He called Mom and let her know I was coming over, so I rolled with it. She was pretty hurt by my sister's plans to ruin her and Dad's relationship with me and my wife and to use the grandkids as pawns. She cried a lot and wanted to confront them immediately. Dad got her to put a pin in that for a while. Mom was also dumbfounded about me supposedly being the favorite child. She feels like they were actually more strict with me because I had a hard curfew and my sisters didn't. To be honest, I barely remember that. It was 25 years ago. A couple of side notes. Middle sister eventually told our folks she's divorced. She's currently living off child support and her half of the home sale. Supposedly, she's trying to find a job. My parents have gone low contact with both sisters. No idea how permanent that is, but Mom seems like she's completely had it with them for the foreseeable future. They're spending a lot of time at the vacation house. We're up there over a month at one point. Ex-brother-in-law found my Reddit posts. He's not terribly happy about them, but feels they're more or less accurate, though obviously he found them slanted towards my point of view. He disagreed that he's boring, but said, to be fair, that he finds me boring as well. I can live with that. Our worlds don't have much overlap, except my sister. We got the trust set up for my parents' house. I'm the trustee. All this has been emotionally draining for me. I decided it would be a good idea for me to see a therapist again. I've seen one in the past, mainly for stress-related issues. I've been doing so for a while, and it's definitely helpful. The therapist tells me my decision to stay no contact with my siblings is healthy for now, but also wants me to keep an open mind down the road. Merry Christmas to you all. Am I the idiot for keeping the classic cars I bought fair and square from a sweet old lady despite her faux grandson's threats? I'm close friends with a coworker, and we've helped his mother in her 80s with house maintenance. His mother's neighbor, whom I'll call Elaine, was in her 90s in 2016 when Elaine's husband, who was in a home, died. While doing maintenance on my coworker's mother's house, I drove there in my 1975 Falcon, and Elaine came out to ask me to have a look at some cars I might like that had belonged to her husband. I won't go into detail, except 3 were in good drivable condition and worth a decent figure, and 2 more were ruined but good parts cars. At the time, I couldn't afford anywhere near what they were genuinely worth. 2 are at least in the top 5 desirable Australian classics. I told her what they could fetch on the open market, but she was happy to take $5,000 for all 5 cars, well under their value. She wanted to make sure they went to someone who would appreciate them, and I paid for and collected them a week later. I still have the 3 good ones. 2 now on historic registration and the other in storage. Elaine passed away in the middle of this year, and her grandson is on the warpath over the cars. He's found my contact details and phoned me several times, threatening to sue for effectively stealing the cars from his grandmother, and has turned up at my front door once demanding the return of the cars. I have not been served or received anything in writing from him in a legal sense, only his business card, which sounds dodgy. I've verified he's an actual lawyer, as he claims through a website of his employer, which lists him with a photo as specializing in commercial and insurance law, just like his business card. I'd have expected, if there was a real legal issue with the ownership of the cars, it would be in relation to the grandmother's estate proceedings, and I'd be contacted by mail by someone acting as executor, not via phone calls and doorstop visits by one angry, smug bastard acting like it's happening between me and him alone. Since I'm not a lawyer and my presumptions could be completely out, I'm posting here. If need be, I could now afford the market price of all the cars. Is the grandson likely to have a case, and should I find a lawyer of my own? Now for a few comments. One commenter said, if Elaine's husband left them to her in his will, she was free to do with them as she pleased. Ergo, the grandson has no claim. He'd be banking on your uncertainty of that to strong-arm you into cutting a deal. Don't ignore any official summons or claims, but you can safely tell him to sod off over the phone. Then they added, if you want to get really petty, you could contact his law firm and complain about him, but as long as he wasn't intimating that his employer was in any way involved, it's none of their business. So they could tell you, cool, so what? I replied, thanks. Banking on my uncertainty is a good way to describe the vibe I'm getting from him. He's not exactly throwing his law firm's name around, but it is on the business card he gave me. Another commenter asked about the cars, and I said, I feel more comfortable describing them now after reading the responses here. One registered is an XY GT replica in nice shape built from a Fairmont. The other registered is an XB Fairmont Coupe in excellent original condition. And the third, I'm still working on getting back on the road, is an XA sedan Falcon 506. The last 2 were wrecks and have already been parted out and the good bits kept. A spare XA sedan and an XW that looks like it had spent 30 years as yard art. The XW collapsed at the torque boxes in plenum while being trailered and nearly came off in 2 pieces, but worth it for the glass and trim alone. Now for the 13-day update. I spoke with my coworker about the issue, and he talked with his mother, who clued me in to her neighbor, Elaine, not having any grandsons. My coworker's mother is still in contact with Elaine's son and daughter, as they own and still work on Elaine's old house next door. She put them in contact with me. They wanted to know who it was who was actually threatening what about the cars, as Elaine has no grandsons, and we spoke. They identified the lawyer grandson as an old ex. He was once a partner of, but not married to, one of Elaine's granddaughters for a few years. He's also known to be in a lot of debt, which might explain desperate hunting for valuable items. Elaine's son and daughter reiterated that their dad had left instructions to Elaine for the cars to go to someone who cherished them, and they were happy they did, and glad to hear from me that they're still being looked after together. I haven't contacted the faux grandson's law firm yet. I have a lot of evidence of his misrepresentations to me, and after Googling NS-SWAP's law, I'm not 100% sure of the legality of all of it, especially about sharing my home security and dashcam recordings directly to the other firm, or even speaking directly to them. I'll go through my own legal representation there as a filter on what I need to give them to make sure they know of his behavior linked to their firm. Small update. Fake grandson came around twice more. I now have multiple records of him visiting my residence, threats via text, and many phone calls to me after I asked him to not contact me again, except in writing. Complaints have been made through my lawyer to his firm and relevant regulatory bodies. I informed him of the complaints on Thursday and reiterated not to contact me again, and I haven't heard a peep from him since. Last update. Fake grandson had already been dismissed from the firm before my lawyer and I complained, and he already has complaints against him for other reasons. Am I the idiot for telling my friends to stop playing Cupid with my life. Hey everybody, I am hoping to get some advice on my current predicament between myself and my friends Sam and Sarah. You see, I am very unattractive. I don't mean that as a put down on myself, but an objective fact about my appearance. I have a very naturally unappealing face with several body scars that make me difficult to look at for some people. I've had most of these scars most of my life, and of course, I was born with my face, so I've never been much to look at. I have tried to compensate in other aspects of life. I have a decent job, I'm tall, and I'm in very good shape. I go to the gym and eat well. Sadly, this is far from enough to make up for how I look. I have had very few relationships and only one intimacy partner, though I'd prefer it had never happened after the fact, though I certainly tried, put myself out there for years, and was rejected by dozens of women before meeting one that I thought would be able to look past my appearance. I lost my virginity to her and everything, but after a month, she came to my place crying and saying, though she found me attractive as a person, she couldn't get over my appearance and had felt terrible. She confessed intimacy with me was extremely difficult the 2 times we did it due to how I looked. I told her I understood and we went our separate ways. I'd have been happier if we'd been friends and never dated, if I'm being honest. That was several years ago, and I swore off romantic love and intimacy since it was just hurting me. Life has been pretty good since I gave up. Wish I wasn't what I am so I could find love, but I get it. I made some great friends, Sam and Sarah. Been friends with them for a few years now, and we get along great. The only issue is that they are in relationships and have this fantasy about going on triple dates with me included. Problem is, of course, I don't date, and so they have been trying to play matchmaker. There have been probably 7 or 8 attempts now to get me with some friend or acquaintance of theirs, ranging from being blindsided with a date when I thought I'd just be there with them, or inviting girls to parties and trying to get us together all night. I hate it. I feel bad for these girls because obviously they weren't told about this either, and now they have to play nice with the weird, ugly guy their friends dumped them on. Not only that, but there is this look in their eyes that I'm sadly used to now. It's a combination of sadness and fear that overcomes them when we make eye contact. I can feel them looking at every mark on my face, getting more and more grossed out and uncomfortable. Of course, they're scared. This 6'6" man who looks like Frankenstein's monster has become your date for the night. I'd be scared too. I tell them every time not to set me up as I don't want to date, but they get so excited to finally find the one for me that they do it anyway. So backstory aside, I keep telling Sam and Sarah to stop setting me up. And last week they came over to hang out and Sarah kept mentioning this friend of hers from work and starts showing me pictures. I see where this is all going, and when I find out they invited her to Sam's party in a few weeks. I say cool, I look forward to meeting her, but this isn't a date and I won't be letting them push me onto the poor girl. She's cute, and from what they tell me I'm sure we'd get along great if I were normal, but that just isn't the case. Sarah begins to get upset at me and asks me why I won't just give her a shot, so I asked if this girl had even seen a picture of me or heard about me. She admitted that she had not and hadn't planned on showing her my pic or even telling her about me until the night of the party. I'll admit I snapped and told both of them to stop playing matchmaker. I was sick of it and showed them texts from 2 of the girls they victimized. They were kind enough to tell me they liked me but weren't physically attracted to me. Showed the texts, and Sarah and Sam made an excuse and left. Haven't heard from them in a week. How can I fix this? I've made my peace with the fact that I will never know romantic love, but I need friends. Now for some of the comments. When asked to show a picture of himself, he said, "The last person I trusted to show my pic sent it to her group chat to laugh at me. I don't like putting it out there anymore." Sorry, when a commenter asked if he would agree to the matchmaking if his friends showed his pictures, he replied, "Part of me wants to say I would, but after having the last relationship end the way it did, I'd rather not risk it." A commenter suggested that maybe someone who is visually impaired would appreciate the real him. He responded, "I considered this at one point, but then she has to deal with potential harassment over being the blind or visually impaired girl who settled for the ugly guy. Or I'm seen as the beast that took advantage of her. I'm not putting some poor, innocent girl through that. Another commenter said he should be single because that's what he wants, not because of what he thinks others want. He replied, "I've seen what being with me physically does to a woman. It broke the only woman unfortunate to have intimacy with me. I just can't do that to another person. I've hurt enough people." A commenter pointed out his negative self-talk, saying, "Please, dude, get some help. These comments about yourself are very unkind and very unnecessary and very extreme. This isn't the writing of someone whose life has been pretty good." He replied, "I'm not exaggerating. My appearance frightens people. I'm not normal." When a commenter noted that confidence is attractive and said he sounded depressing to be around, he responded, "That's fair. I don't actually talk about this kind of stuff, except when I'm telling Sam and Sarah why I don't want them matchmaking me. I don't let my looks bother me when it's just hanging out. It's when they've tried pushing me into these situations that the negativity comes out." Now for one of the top comments. "Hey Sam and Sarah, I'm sorry our last conversation ended the way it did, but I'm not sorry we had it. The unfortunate truth of the matter is, you are being incredibly dismissive and disrespectful of my life choices. It is comparable to if I told you I was gay and you insisted on continuing to set me up with women because you feel you know better than me what I want. It's a shame if my current life choice for myself makes you so uncomfortable that you can't fathom being in my life unless I'm coupled up. That hurts, but if that is how things have to be, then so be it. If me, as I am, a single person who wishes to remain so at this time, is enough for you to still want to be friends with me, then that's great. However, going forward, you would have to respect my wishes and my boundaries regarding this issue. I will leave you with that for now, and I hope to hear from you." Now for a few comments. One commenter said, "So sorry you've gotten so many responses doing the exact same thing your friends do. It sucks to be so dismissed all the time." Then OP replied, "Your last paragraph is so appreciated. Thank you so much." Now for the 4-day update. Hey everyone. I figured since posting here the other day ended up being an overall cathartic experience, and since I have a very happy update, I'm back to share. After spending hours reading and responding to users, both in thread and in DMs, I decided to reach out to Sam and Sarah and try to set things right. We met up to talk, and to keep it short, Sam and Sarah hadn't reached out because they felt terrible after realizing their mistakes. They were very apologetic, and I promised that as long as they stopped trying to set me up and forgave me for snapping at them, then we were cool with each other. Looks like communication saves the day again. So after our talk, they asked if I wanted to come over and play some games and have a few drinks with them and some of their work friends. Sarah admitted, the girl, Laura, that they wanted to set me up with would be there, but that they hadn't said anything to her about me, and there would be no pressure or matchmaking going on. So I agreed to go. So last night I came over for drinks and games. I met Laura without some stupid blind date pretext, and she's a lovely person. We have several interests in common, and she and I have very similar jobs within different companies, so we have a lot to talk about. It's great. They didn't meddle, and I got a new friend. Easy peasy. Heck, we get along so great. She's inviting me over to her place tonight to watch some movies we both learned were some of our favorites. Then some pizza and complaining about working in IT. So my social life is alive and well, it seems. That's about it as far as my update is concerned. Sam, Sarah, and I are cool. I made a new friend, and I got to talk to so many wonderful people on Reddit. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to read my post and give me your opinions and advice. There are some really great folks in this community. Heck, I'm still receiving a few messages a day of kindness from you awesome people. Now for a few top comments. One commenter said, "She invited you over for pizza and a movie at her place. I think you have more of a shot than you realize." Another added, "Even if this girl isn't interested, I think this will help you relax and put less pressure on yourself about your looks. Maybe you aren't the most attractive guy, but you seem like an interesting, intelligent person, So just be happy with yourself for your good qualities. And another commenter shared, I just want to throw it out there. I don't know what you look like. And also could not really care less because I've met some ugly people in my life and I am 300 pounds. Just don't knock yourself down a few notches. I don't give a shoot what you look like. You've got a good job, you're safe around women, you're in shape and care about your well-being. You maintain communication and friendships. You have boundaries and realistic expectations. You're respectful. The way you look is the least interesting part of you. Somebody is out there for you and will also recognize that your face is the last interesting part of you. Now for the 2.5-year update. A few years ago, I came to Reddit to ask about an issue I was having with my friends trying to set me up on blind dates. I have linked those posts above for context. I am physically very unattractive due to various circumstances in my life, leaving me scarred, which causes issues in blind dating, as you might guess. I then updated it after we had resolved the issue. The woman they were going to try and set me up with before our argument, Laura, ended up being really cool and without the pressure of it being a blind date and just us hanging out with a larger group, we clicked and were fast friends. We hung out the night after at her place to watch movies and eat pizza. It was great. We started hanging out more and more as time went on, and eventually she asked me out. I was terrified initially, but decided to go for it. She's not bothered by my scars. She looks at me with kindness and warmth that is indescribably wonderful to me. Laura and I are still together. We got a place together not too long ago, and I intend to propose to her early next year. Sam, Sarah, and I are all still great friends. We now go on those triple dates they always wanted. We even did our first Friendsgiving with them, their SOs, and the kids. Laura loves getting to cook for a house full of guests, and we intend to try and host more group meals now that we have a place with space for it. It wasn't easy, but with a growing support network in Laura and my friends, I was able to finally get some more help for my mental health to work on my insecurities and trauma. Been going for over a year now, and progress is slow but steady. Laura has been my rock. I love her more than I ever hated myself, so it's been easier than I expected to keep going to therapy appointments. So that's about it. I was in a very dark place, and some kindness from internet strangers helped me through a rough patch. So I wanted to repay them by at least posting an update, even if most of those people have since moved on. Now for a comment from OP. A commenter said, "This is such a sweet and heartwarming update. OP, I'm so happy for you and Laura, and I'm glad you're getting help to work through your insecurities. I'm glad you decided to take another shot at love, especially since the pressure of finding it through blind dates was taken off. May you have a great long life surrounded by love and support. Thanks for updating us." Then OP replied, "Thank you so much. People were so kind to me when I came here before, and I felt like reaching out when I remembered everything I posted. I was in a very dark place, and I bet I worried some kind-hearted people with all that negative self-talk. Before Laura, I never thought I'd even be allowed to imagine getting to spend my life with someone. Yet here I am planning a proposal for the woman I love, and she loves me. I'm a lucky man. I'm sorry for rambling. I had to stop myself from going on and on about Laura in the post, and I'm almost doing it here too.